For my project for the semester that I based everything off, I was doing over 10 network upgrade for my parents' photo studio. So for my request for proposal, it was originally a 3-page document, and I kind of boiled it down here for the main points. But basically, what kind of the company I was looking for, so my parents' company I was looking for, is Thompson Studio is complaining about slow web search times, intermittent access to the internet, and wants a central place to store all of its photos, videos so they can have quick access to them. So what was going on in this scenario is it would take them at least 5 to 10 seconds to search on Google on their computers or their cell phones. Depending on where you were in their building, they would have intermittent access to the internet there. And then they wanted kind of a central place to store their photos and videos because before this they were storing everything on hard drives and they had lost some data before. It was kind of clumsy for them to find the hard drive that they needed and then get the data off of it. So they kind of wanted a central place where they could access them over the internet. So they wouldn't have to worry about data loss, and then there's also some sort of organization system to it. So what kind of would HermTech, my company, would offer and what the goal would be is the overall goal is by the time HermTech Inc. is done going through Thompson Studios network, that Thompson Studios employees will have access to the internet with fast web searches, have uninterrupted access to the internet, and have a central place where all the employees can store their data and retrieve it at any time. And how I would go about doing this upgrade is I would first go in and test the Wi-Fi, get a baseline. And then I would replace their router, as this seems to be a kind of a router issue, long request times, intermediate access to internet. And then I would also install another access point because their building's kind of a long rectangle. So I'd put one on kind of the front of the front of the building and the end of the building, so that all areas are covered and in range of the router and the access point. And then I would also put Ethernet connections to all the computers. So the computers are hardwired into the internet or the network versus relying on Wi-Fi. And then I would I'd build them a NAS where they could pull all their data off their hard drives, put them onto this NAS. That way, there's a central place for all of them. They don't have to worry about hard drives going missing. And then we would allow them to access all that data from the internet. So in my request for proposal, I did a cost breakdown. So I, set the access point as for $100, the network storage is $375, the router would be $60, the cabling, all the Cat 5e cabling, Cat 6e cabling would be $50. The hard drives would probably be the most expensive besides the labor at $355 in total for all the hard drives you would need for storage. And then for the switch, I would have to put in a new switch to connect the access point and the router together. And then this is before we delved into like how many people we needed on the job, but I had only 2 techs, and I estimated the time out to be for if it was 25 hours per tech to about $300 for labor, which brought the total cost to $1,260. And then I also included a technical drawing, just this is a kind of a rough mock-up, but their current setup here, they have the one router, and then here's their computers. So here's their lobby there. You can see that some parts of the lobby aren't covered. And, if clients are coming in, they make sure their clients have access. And then a big thing is if you look down here, their photo booth was not covered just because their router didn't have that range, starting to fail. And this was a big problem for the employees and the clients because they wanted network access down there. So what my proposed new setup would do is I would install a new router that would cover the lobby here. And then I would also put an access point down here that would cover the photo booth, ensuring that the whole photo booth is covered. I'd also put the switch right there, might as well keep it close, and then I'd run the cabling back along the roof or the ceiling to the new router. And then I put the network area storage in the offices, kind of in the corner where it won't bother anybody, but it allows all these computers and devices to connect to that router or to the network, and they can pull that data off there. So for the network diagram, I'm going to flip over to my VM real quick, just because it's a little hard how I have it set up to show on a PowerPoint. But for my network diagram here, I have kind of my, my title, so network upgrade, and then each kind of sub part of the network. So I have the preliminary activities, the gathering materials part, the deployment part, the testing, clean up and walkthrough and follow up. And we'll just kind of scroll through here. So, I'm going to be testing the network connection of the existing setup, gathering external hard drives, maybe scouting for locations to put the new hardware, measuring distance for cabling, and then I would go and find and purchase new router, cabling, the access point, the switch, the NAS, and all the hard drives, and then gather any sort of tools required for the installation. From there, I would, as they arrive, ensure that they all work and function as intended, because I would hate to install an access point that's broken from the factory or broken from shipping. And then we'd place the hardware in the predetermined spots that we had mapped out earlier. We'd start running cables to routers, the switch, the access point, and all the computers. And then we would start configuring everything. So installing, configuring the router and all the cabling, the access point, the switch, the NAS. And then we would hook up the computers to Ethernet. And then we would test the network configuration, making sure all the computers can access the access point or the NAS. So, devices are able to connect to the access point. The switch is working, and everything routes back to the router. Once the network test is good, we'd come back and kind of start cleaning up the office, making sure any mess we made we clean up. We'd clean up the photo booth because of the installation of the AP and the switch. And then we do kind of a walkthrough of the client, just kind of show them what we did, kind of show them like if something, breaks, this is how you get to the settings of the router or the access point. This is how you use the NAS, and etc. And after some time, we'd do a follow up with the client about a week later, just to ensure everything's working and there's no hiccups. And from there, we would then send out our customer evaluations, just to kind of get some feedback on the project and kind of how it went. So overall, this is kind of our network diagram here. As you can see, we start, fairly simple, and then we kind of get to our critical path here that takes the longest. And we have our part that breaks up and everything has to be completed by the time we test the network. And then just kind of the wrap up leading that way. Flipping back to our PowerPoint here, for resource usage, once again, kind of hard to show here. Wrong one. So we'll go to resource usage here, and you can see I kind of split up the tasks between the workers. The reason why Sam's, if you look here, is 84.05 hours is because it's accounting for the kind of the week-long wait to get a response back from the client. But as you can see, I have all the hours here and all the work, and then everything that'll be done, and then let it populate, all the hours that would be needed for working. Like I said, it's accounting for all those times that she's got to wait for those replies. And it'll scroll down here, and then we got the router, the cabling, the NAS, the AP, the switch, the hard drives, and then incidental expenses, just to ensure. So that's all there for you. Moving on to our team planner here. We'll go to team planner. So here's the three of us. So there was me, Trent, and Sam. And you can kind of see the planner. So I would come in, start testing the network, measuring distance to each hardware for cables, find and purchase the new router and cabling, switch and access point. And then as I'm doing that, Trent will be scouting for places to put the new hardware, and Sam would be gathering the external hard drives. Moving from there, Trent would be working on purchasing a new NAS and hard drives and waiting for that to come in. Sam would be gathering tools, and then me and Trent would be ensuring that all the parts arrive and function. And then Trent's going to start running Ethernet cables to everybody. Sam's going to start putting hardware in predetermined spaces and help Trent with running cables. After that's all done, I'll start configuring the router and the cabling. He'll start configuring the NAS, and Sam will start configuring the AP and the switch. And then she'll also be in charge of hooking up computers to Ethernet. Everything's all said and done. Trent will go ahead and test the network, and then start cleaning up with Sam. He's going to clean up the photo booth. Sam will clean up the office, and I'll start doing the walkthrough with the client. And then Sam will do a follow-up with the client about a week later. get some feedback from them, and then Sam will send out the customer evaluations and wait for that response to come in there. So that is our team planner there. So for our resource sheet, here's all the resources listed. So there's the 3 workers and all the items we need. So the router, the cables, which is usually in feet, the NAS, the AP, the switch, and the hard drives. And then we have our incidental expenses there. And you can see that my standard rate would be 28 hours, $28 an hour. Overtime would be 42. Trent's at 30. He would get 45. Sam's at 20, and she would get 30. The router would cost 70. The cables would cost 40. The NAS is 300. The AP is 150. Switch is 30, and then the hard drives are $67 a pop. And then I don't have anything for the incidental because that will just kind of come up as time permits. So for the NAT chart and tasks, we'll flip back real quick. So as you can see here, I have the NAT chart all set up. So we have the preliminary activities, which is just getting everything ready. Here's all the times for it, how long it would take, and then who's all assigned to it. Gathering materials, I'm gathering the cables, per fleet, the router per unit, the switch per unit, the access point per unit, getting the hard drives per unit. Sam's gathering the tools. We got the deployment here. So putting everything in the predetermined spots. So there's once again Sam, Trent, Max. The NAS, which is Sam. Trent is configuring the NAS. And Sam's looking up with the computers, and then we're doing the testing, and then the cleanup. Sam and Trent, and then I am doing the walkthrough of the client, and then we just got the follow up with Sam, and that kind of looks like this with the little chart here. I'll just keep scrolling a little bit there for you. Everything stacks evenly. There's no overlaps or anything. Oops. Overlaps or anything. And then, we got our critical path here. If we zoom in just a little bit, you can see all that. Sam and Trent, all the way down. Then we just got that period of waiting for the response from the client and the follow through. And then the follow up, waiting for that, which takes the most time. And obviously in a real project, we could cut that down if we got a response right away, and we wouldn't have such long wait times. So for our resource overview, here's our charts for everything. So we got work by status. We had to complete a couple of tasks to start getting a idea of how everything was going. And you'll see here that Sam doesn't have a lot of work done, just because she kind of plays some bigger parts later on, but me and Trent do a lot of the bolt work right up ahead. So me and Trent at this point would have 21 and 26 hours remaining, and Sam would have 80, once again accounting for the long time waiting for those reports, the report and feedback to come in. But here is our resource overview. So for our over-allocated resources, we have nothing so far. Everything as of the completion of 7/3/23, kind of where I stopped ending the tasks to get those reports. Nothing's been over-allocated, which is good to see. We have our task cost overview here, and as you can see, the actual cost and the remaining cost of gathering everything that we'll need is going to take the most, just based on labor and the cost of everything, and then the follow-up just based on labor. But there is our task cost overview. So we have $266 complete, and our futures is $5,471. Cost overview. Here's everything. Once again, so this is kind of interesting. I love this part right here. The most expensive part of this is just going to be the labor, for the 3 of us, and then the actual parts itself are going to be pretty cheap. They're about the fourth of the cost. And then, here's my actual cost, and then what's remaining, Trent's cost and what's remaining, and then Sam, as you can see, like I said, she hasn't done a lot so far, so her remaining cost is quite high. As the time of this, she completed 0.75 hours at $15 an hour, and she has 20 hours remaining. So cost overruns, you can see that gathering materials, like I said, has the highest kind of percentage of that, and then the follow-up will take the longest too, just because we're waiting we're here waiting for the parts to come in. Gave us about a week for that just due to shipping, and then the follow up is waiting for those replies and any in that follow up. Then we got our cost variances here for all the parts. Here's our costs so far, and then the percentage complete. And that is all I have for you guys today. That's everything we need to cover. But like I said, this was a test one that I did for my project, and I actually did something similar to this in real life. I didn't go quite as far, and I certainly didn't do everything like this. But I did actually install a new router and a new access point in my parents' studio, so it was kind of fun to do this project. Alongside that, as I could kind of base everything I was doing in real time and kind of see how a real company would come in and do all this versus just having their son come in and do it for them. So thanks, and hope you have a great rest of your day.